Hello, welcome everyone. This is Mihai Algiu, founder of Circle of Being Somatic Shadow Work, and I'm a marriage and family therapist focusing on somatic psychotherapy, awareness-based somatic psychotherapy, and this interview is part of a series that I started a few years ago called Psychotherapy and Non-Duality, where I was following my interest to talk to people, teachers, spiritual teachers, or therapists, or healers, or facilitators, or just wise men or women who are somehow combining in their work these seemingly separate buckets of, spirituality, awakening, consciousness, Buddhism, with processing our pain body, trauma, our, what usually it's associated with psychotherapy or healing work. And so that's my umbrella. And so I would like to introduce Darby Totten, my guest. And welcome, Darby.
Thank you. Hi, Mihai.
Yeah, and I will, I want to say that I have, so Darby is, I would say, one of the senior facilitators. I mean, I met her as a senior facilitator in a Killaby Inquiries, KI. So this is the work developed by Scott Killaby and co-developer Dan McClintock. And Scott was initially, coming as a rising star, awakened spiritual teacher, going to doing satsangs and writing non-duality awakening books. And then in his journey, he realized that the awakening and consciousness and this kind of Buddhist non-duality work was not enough, and he realized he had a bunch of pockets of suffering that created a lot of suffering, and he was honest enough and humble enough and to realize that, hey, I'm not done and I need to pull away from being this wise master and see what's going on with me. And he, out of that, became, after a few years down the road, he developed this modality. And that's where I met Darby, this modality, KI, Killaby Inquiries, which is based in awareness, kind of witnessing, kind of way of processing, but it's not just spiritual work, transcendence, reaching higher states, or observing, witnessing, but it's an active surgical dive into our pain body, subconscious, unconscious, trauma, and all the aftermath. So I met Darby in that context, and she's one of the senior facilitators for quite some long time, knowing Scott. And I had once a friend. I mean, I have a friend, and my friend needed to do some deeper processing. So then I asked Scott, hey, I want somebody for my friend. And then so Scott recommended you. So then I, also my friend, she wanted me to witness your sessions with her at some point, some years ago. So that's when I witnessed you. I was like a fly on the wall, just watching you.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she wanted me, and I was like, great. So I watched, and I was like, yeah, I like that. I like her. So that's when I appreciate and I could see your work in action. And then later down the road, I needed some more skilled attention on my own material that created suffering. So I reached out to you, and I had, in the KI, in the Killer Bee Inquiry community, we have this, we are lucky we can trade sessions or we can work with each other, even though we are, I say, facilitators. So I am very grateful and lucky to have been on the side of being on your couch, let's say, on the couch,
Yeah.
being your client. And also I have seen you teach. Yeah. So Darby is not only a senior KI facilitator, the highest rank, so-called green checkmark facilitator, but also she is handpicked by Scott Killaby to teach this modality and to train other people to become facilitators. And so I have watched you teach this, and I really liked your teaching. So I find Darby as very highly skilled and as a healer, and a teacher of healing. And I appreciate this interesting combination of being very warm and loving and compassionate, at the same time very precise and thorough and meticulous. And like kind of in a compassionate, soft way, relentless about staying with that thread of suffering and kind of having strong leadership to be like, hey, let's come back. And also very clear mind understanding and ability to explain and share, in a fluid way. So yeah, thanks for and so then I had this idea, hey, I want to interview Darby, more like the point of view of, and we are talking to Darby just now, and I'm interested more like, hey, let's talk about the process of healing rather than let's talk about you, or although I'm going to ask you questions about you, but let's talk about the process of healing. And from your extensive experience with yourself and others, what seems to be essential? There are many orientations about healing in the history of healing arts, and so that's what I want to delve in. What seems to be the core components, what needs to happen for the healing to happen? How do you go about it? How do you access what needs to happen when somebody comes to you with suffering? But before, I would like to ask you a little bit about yourself. Like, how did you end up realizing that that's what you love to do and that's what you are meant to do? And how did you become a healer or facilitator? Or
Yeah, good question. And how much time do we have? I'll try to keep it brief so we can talk about other things too. But first of all, I just want to say I sound awesome the way you describe me. So thank you. I'm glad this is being recorded. I'll listen to it back and hopefully not get too inflated of an ego. How I became so drawn to deep healing work, and as you described, thorough healing work, that really, I feel like that's kind of maybe a real strength of mine, is my draw to be really thorough with an area where somebody else might say, that's enough, that's good enough. I'm like, hold on, and not yet, because I can sense, I just have a spidey sense about that. I don't know where that comes from. And I just say thank you to my universe for that. But my draw to do this work and my passion for it comes from my own need for it. I became the facilitator I needed all those years ago. And I didn't even know that's what I was doing, but a very wise woman who I was house sitting for in Ecuador for quite a long time, she became a good friend. And she pointed that out to me because I was searching and searching and searching for the teacher, the healer that I needed. And she was like, girl, when are you going to see that it's you? You're just not her yet. Keep studying, keep trying, keep, going for it. And I kind of knew what she meant contextually, but now it's a lived experience. And so I think that's one way of saying why I'm so drawn to this. Another thing that's sort of coming up to say is that I know what it is to suffer internally, where everything looks fine on the outside, privileged even. Mm. And yet there's this excruciating, immovable pain within. And you're trying this and you're trying that, and you've got your coping mechanisms to try not to feel it for a few hours a day. And all of the ways that suffering, that pain within drives us into toxic relationships, toxic behaviors, sabotage, self-sabotage, or sabotaging others, and all kinds of things that we wouldn't do that way if we knew, if we didn't have that pain within driving all of it. And yeah, I was looking everywhere that I knew to look for help, and it wasn't helping, and the modalities that I was trying, they would help to a point, and then I would find that I was back in it again. Mm-hmm. And then I'd try something else, and it would be going well, and it would be working, and then I would be back in it again. And so I think the reason that I sort of found really my niche or my strength in this work that Scott teaches, and also in my work with the entheogens and plant medicines, is because, well, especially in Scott's work, Scott Killaby, we have even deeper, more laser-like tools now. But when I first came to the work, it was really meeting the core limiting or deficiency beliefs that were driving the suffering in the first place. And so all the plant medicine, all these other healing modalities, they were meeting the pain, but they weren't meeting the driver of the pain, the belief underneath that I didn't even entirely know that I had, or I knew that I had it, but these modalities weren't unhooking me from it or helping to resolve it and helping me to see that it's not true about me, or that it's okay if it's true, and it's okay if the opposite is true. It's okay if I'm not good enough, and it's okay that I'm fucking good enough. Is it okay if I say fuck on here?
Yeah, I usually do that in this channel.
Okay. All right. I'm just gonna be myself, and here I am. So yeah, so I think that's when I found the work that I do now as a Killaby inquiries facilitator and repression facilitator, it really met that missing piece of the puzzle for me. And when I started to sort of cotton onto that and get skillful at that, man, there was nothing stopping me. And it's been transformational for me. And that's just the basic KI tools, not even the repression tools that have, that's next level stuff. So
yeah. So you're saying that like a major dent or major turning point for you, although you've done a lot of healing modalities and tried various things, that just had some more like preparatory effect or some alleviation effect, or develop some coping skills to manage your suffering, is more like when you got to Scott's work, then that you really got a handle on it and started to be a serious breakthrough for you?
Well, I was always very serious about it, but the things that I was doing, expecting that the results would last, the results didn't last.
Yeah.
And then in this work, for me, the results did last. And so, I just went all in with this. And I'll use these tools also in psychedelic integration and other my other modalities that I still love to work with and help people with. So we can talk about that later if needed. But
yeah, Yeah, I like that. I'm doing that too, hybridizing. I feel like also knowing your work, I've seen you hybridize a bunch of different tools and modalities.
Yeah.
So, yeah, hybridizing this KI with psychedelic integration or psychedelic work. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of revolutionary, and I don't think we're going to go into it right now.
No problem.
But yeah, I have, what I appreciate about your style is that I could see that you are highly skilled and precise and experienced with the Killer Bee Inquiries tools. At the same time, me coming from a therapeutical and like I was a searcher of modalities and the teachings, like all my life, a seeker of techniques. I could see like, oh, okay, you're working with me or others, and then you are kind of switching to a little bit of inner child work, and then you're switching to a little bit of, let's say, shamanic visualization, then you switch into something else, and then you switch into a little bit of zooming out of the processing into more like exploration or resting in our presence and all of that. So I like that you were very versatile and fluid within all these modalities, which I think it's great to have a range. And there's no just one thing that is the ultimate that is going to work for everybody all the time. So can you talk a little bit like what are your most favorite, let's say you have this Darby KI shamanic blend or something, what were the most important ingredients that you combine there, or the modalities or tools that are your go-tos, apart from, I would assume, the primary Killer Bee Inquiries, the basic Killer Bee Inquiries, as well as this deeper trauma repression work, KI?
Sure. Yeah, I love this conversation because what we're on to right now is what made me even better at what I do and how I do it. And my clients are the ones who pointed out, like, in working with people, I saw that just the Killer Bee Inquiries tools were not enough. That wasn't the whole package. It's a great package, right? But I started to see, actually, you sent me a few, I think you had some client overflow. Some people needed some support and you didn't have enough time to support everybody. And so I supported a few people you sent to me. And at that time I was still quite rigid. I was still quite like, stay inside the lines, just do this modality. It's so good, right? And it is so good. But I admittedly let some people down and even myself down in that process because I wasn't free enough and fluid and self-trusting enough yet. That came as a lesson from some of these clients, these people who are in pain, suffering, got some things going on that they really need relief from. And I wasn't freeing myself up to do all these different modalities and trust my intuition yet enough to support them in whatever way I was vibing, or this intuition was vibing in the moment, which I totally do now. I surrender to that and to this sort of, something larger than me and the client guiding the session. I'm a total believer in this. And the more that I surrender to that, the sessions just get more and more powerful, and I can't take credit for it. I have some skills, sure, but something else is tapping me on the shoulder going, do this, and something that isn't obvious. And so I'll have them do that, whatever it is. And it's just like, that was so perfect. It's exactly the thing. And I can't take credit for that. But let's come back to what you were asking about. So some of the modalities are what you mentioned, inner child work. I'm a huge believer in inner child work. And check this out. So like in the 90s, like late 90s, and then coming into the new century, for some reason, I had a real distaste for inner child work, despite that I had never done it. I wasn't on a healing path yet. I was kind of on a spiritual path, but not really devoted. I was still playing out the old program, right? That we're all indoctrinated into, like be a success, like make something of your life, and all that other stuff. But I would just roll my eyes when I heard that language, inner child work. Little would I know that a couple decades later, it would be one of my favorite tools and one of the most transformational tools that I use in my toolbox. And when it comes to the repression work, that is kind of the new modality on the block, inside of the KI organization. I use inner child work liberally in order to help people go into the very difficult work of repression work. It's sort of, I find that it helps make the entry into that intense, scary work easier, creates more capacity, helps us just meet stuff without so much resistance and fear and terror. So that's one thing. Yeah, so that's one of them. Let's see. I love just doing voice dialogue in general. So like whether it's dialoguing with an inner child or dialoguing with my rage or my terror, my fear, right? I just love like connecting with the energy and talking with it as if it's an entity that can speak for itself and listen. And I just shut up and listen. And so when I say dialogue, it's more like me asking a quality question and just shut up and wait for the answer, because the answers are gold. There's so much in them. And not just in that moment either. Like one of the things that I love to do when I'm doing my own work or supporting somebody is that when I get an answer response from these energies of the inner child or the body energy of anger or a contraction or whatever, just hang out with that answer for a minute. Mm-hmm. Don't move on to the next question. Stop for a minute, tune in, really be with it, because inside of that answer, it's rich. There's a lot layered in there. And if we just blow right past it, we miss a lot of good stuff. We miss recognitions, aha moments, release of stuck energies, release of stuck emotions, and also just coming to meet ourselves, finally, really meeting ourselves and going, oh, this is me. Wow, maybe it's okay that this is me, and like, that's something new. Mm-hmm. Instead of constant rejection of self, and I got to change and mold and tweak myself, Yeah.
So you're talking about like parts work, internal family system, or at least some element of that?
An element of that, because I'm not officially trained. Sorry to interrupt you, Mihai. I'm not officially trained in internal family systems, although that might change. These are the way that I use these tools is how I was taught to work with them during my plant medicine training days, when I was training to hold space for people in their plant medicine journeys. And the downloads I would get, or that which speaks to us and teaches us and heals us in a medicine journey, was guiding me to how to use these things. So I haven't officially been trained in inner child work. I don't exactly know how other people do that work or internal family systems, but this is just sort of what I was shown and guided to do in my plant medicine days. Yeah. And probably, I'm sure I'm influenced by some of the amazing facilitators who have supported me, giving me sessions, helping me do my inner work, and however they do some of this. I'm sure I picked up some tips from them as well. So.
Yeah, I'm also not trained in the internal family system, but before I think internal family system was formed, these teachings were available. I mean, in the fourth way teaching that I studied. Anyway, it doesn't matter how you call it. The idea is that there is some aspect of oneself that it's almost like our full totality is like what Whitman will say, like, hey, I'm multitude. There are different parts, there are different sub-personalities, and each sub-personality has a certain function, and they have a different flavor, and it doesn't mean that we are crazy. So it's not that, you know, this kind of dissociate personality disorder, but we all have different sub-archetypal energies, and it seems like you are saying in together with somatic processing, and it feels right sometimes, rather than to process one thought or one sensation at a time, to like, hey, okay, there seems like there is this journey here that is 16, and so tell me about you, or what do you want, or what the pain. And so giving it a voice of these different sub parts, though from a, let's say, non-dual point of view, there are no parts, and this is just content arising in consciousness, and I agree with that, but then it's actually not so helpful. Helpful sometimes when the person who is suffering has this energetic part, which is like himself. It helps to, rather than deconstruct it, to meet it, to hear it, to,
Absolutely. We agree on that. We agree. And, you know, I've had people bring that up in some of my training meetings or one-on-one with a client, saying, well, but isn't that kind of, you know, reinforcing the false self? And they want to have that conversation. And I don't even want to begin to entertain that conversation, because I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in your freedom from your suffering. Are you interested in that? Then can we let go of spiritual concepts and meet this part of you fully? Because as you know, Mihai, when we fully meet that part of ourselves, which I'm talking about inner child work or meeting, you know, a strong energy in the body through this dialoguing and really hearing it, when we fully meet that part and it feels that it's been heard, somebody gave a crap enough to listen to what it wants and what it needs to say, and helps it get its needs met, maybe through a little shamanic journey or active imagination, helping this young me or this being, this entity, this energy get what it needs. There's a relaxation that happens to that being, let's say, and internally to me, the client. Something relaxes because this thing that's been agitated and ignored, shoved in the shadows, unmet, finally gets to speak and gets seen and gets some love and some compassion and understanding. And it's like, oh. And so it can really, really help soften the inner agitation, for one. For two, as you also know, when we do this in a very thorough way, it's not like we sit there for the next 18 years raising an inner child. No, it just integrates into me. So at the end of the day, it's non-dual anyway. It's going to be not two. It's going to integrate into me, and there's just one. But until it's been fully met, or this fractured part of me has been fully, let's say, welcomed home, a loving home here, not the judgmental or harsh home or neglecting home that it was raised in. Now that integration, that alchemy can happen, that softening, where it just merges, it disappears into me. So I don't have to keep this dual focus. That's ridiculous. And I understand where the question's coming from, but it's not helpful. And when other people are in my meetings and they're hearing this question, they can start to doubt themselves and bug out about the process. And I'm like, please, just trust the process. Just follow the steps and trust the process. And they do, and it's transformational for them. It's great.
Yeah, just to say a little bit on this, I also verified that they are both true. You know, like Scott Killaby is like saying, hey, be careful about not now doing child's work forever and cuddling the child and talking to the child, and there's a little child here forever, then it keeps coming. So he was talking about, hey, realize there's no child, and these are just thoughts, feelings that haven't been witnessed yet, and memory that is charged with unfelt feeling that this sense of identity, but if you really witness this thoroughly, it's going to dissolve. So I agree with that. At the same time, in my training, like somatic psychotherapy training in Hakomi, was like, when you work with someone and you suddenly realize that instead of being this 45-year-old guy, there's this like, it's like there's some like 7-year-old arising. It's they call it child state.
Yeah.
They will say, hey, this is good. You got to this point, you are doing good, because the wounding was in that aspect and the wounded part is coming here. They were saying, don't process the child. Talk to the child, meet the child, be the magical stranger. Is like the advised, loving adult that they didn't have, that comes as you are on the gutter and says, hey, honey, what's going on? Is stressful at home, honey? Yeah. So talking, even like we're instructed to switch from this therapeutical voice or to like talking, how would you talk to a 4-year-old? And all this meeting it as we talked and meeting it like that, and then we get the missing experience to be felt, seen, accepted, heard, which helps the owner of the child to do the same. And then I noticed in myself, this is happening a few times. As you said, it relaxes and it integrates and it's no longer a child, and Scott is right.
Yes, it's both and. Yeah. But first, what you said, what you described, what I described. In my experience, this for those who need it, this needs to come first. For those who can just see through it, great. But I'm suspicious of this if they're coming for healing, because if you're coming for true healing, right, and you're going to see through that, process that, witness that it's just thoughts and all that. Can you imagine the child in reality, the child who is looked through as if they don't exist? You're just a thought. You don't really. This one that shows up in the session is just like that.
Yeah.
Being invisible.
Yeah.
It's again being neglected and treated like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I say careful. Be careful. Let's do the reclaiming. Let's do the listening, the connecting, the healing work first. And then and you don't need to worry about, am I going to over coddle this imaginary inner child? No, you won't. It's a natural integrating alchemical process that happens after the healing work has been done. The healing being listening, attending to, helping them get what they need, this thing that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
After that, there's an inner relaxation, like I described already. And one of the reasons in my experience and that of my clients that inner relaxation happens is because this inner child senses and experiences for themselves that this is internally here is now no longer an abusive space, right? One of the reasons for my suffering was the inner critic. The attacker within was so harsh, right? Intensely so that I never had a moment's peace. I was always under the watchful eye of this attacking, critical, assassinating voice or judge. And when I started to do my own inner child work, and whatever kind of parts work, whether it's with energies or the inner child or teenager, whomever, internally, this became a more supportive, friendly, loving, safe space where the parts could be heard and could trust me that I'm not going to attack them. That's where that inner relaxation would come from. That's where that alchemical process, energetic, emotional alchemy can happen, is because this is becoming a kinder space, a safer space for everything to play out. Downstream of the inner child work and some other modalities, what I've found is when something is kicked up, when I'm triggered, when I'm angry, when I'm scared, I can tune right in and immediately just fully feel what's here. If I want to, I can dialogue with it, just say, I see you, I got you, we're okay. And if we're not okay, we're in it together, you're not alone. And there's just this, me hearing that relaxes into the moment and can process anger, rage, fear, shame, whatever's up much easier. So my point is that what's downstream is an even quicker process. It doesn't even have to be a whole long inner child work process. It can be instant because I'm immediately kind to myself and what's arising, where in the past I was not. I didn't know how to be.
Yeah.
I didn't even know I was harsh on myself. I thought this was just how everybody was, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like this term child state. That's from a Hakomi term. They don't say that your inner child or the child in you. They are just saying the child state, which is like a state of consciousness that is this 6-year-old here. And we're encouraged to recognize that through tracking the voice or the body language. And then switch. If you become sure that the child state is here, switch, change my voice. That is friendly and welcoming to a 6-year-old.
Wow.
And a 45-year-old tough guy. So change that and not go to the child and say, hey, see this thought, see it's not you. See that this is just a thought. Can you watch it? That will be terrible to do this to like a 4-year-old. So it's more like, come here, honey, tell me what's going on. So, and as you're alluding, okay, this is one part, but then there is this like perpetrator, this like bad mom inside that I have, so too we can't say, hey, this is not you, this is just a thought. That also needs to be met and heard somehow.
Yeah.
And I verify this to what you're saying. So doing this process is of meeting parts, listening to them, talking to them. From one angle, this is a lower teaching. However, it is the right teaching for people who haven't done it. And as we've done this meeting of the parts, then they relax and they subside. And then down the stream, we can do it faster or just with a touch. I remember that, I don't know, I discovered this with a child work and I felt fear and my fear was all the time suppressed. So it helped me to be like, it's okay, buddy. It's going to be okay.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to make it. I got you. I'm here for you.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay. And that was very helpful and soothing, although I had some spiritual shame that I'm like, kind of like, But what I noticed after a few months, the same thing will come, and I didn't have to do the whole thing. Hey, buddy, it's going to be okay. It would be like, yeah, it's okay. Just some fear, Yeah.
Yeah. You said even better what I was trying to point to a minute ago, that, as we do this, we don't need to take an hour to do inner child work or 30 minutes. It's just a moment.
Yeah.
And it's not, inner child work at that point, it's just meeting what's arising, but it helps fast track everything as a manner of speaking, fast track. But I also find that it prepares the inner space to go deeper when somebody's ready, if that's what they want. Not everybody wants to go deeper. They just want relief from this stuff. Some people want to go all the way in, deep, 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 and, meet the repression barrier or really go into trauma work and process the trauma work. That's fine. That's fine. This work that we're talking about now and some other modalities, I find are help prepare the space to do so and create the capacity to do so,
Yeah. You mentioned in this interview like that, and I see this, I'm in the clinical world, and I can see that a large majority of therapeutical modalities and my therapist friends or therapists that I know, they are more like offering some temporary alleviation or offering some coping skills to deal with it, to handle life, to make it better, to rearrange the furniture that blocks me, so I can have a little corridor to go in my cluttered room, you know. So, but it's not actual freedom. It's not freedom and like really, yeah. So, yeah, let's go now about what's your understanding of, let's say, the process of where do we get the most suffering? Yeah, people come to you, many people come to you, they are suffering. What is their source of their suffering and how did it come about? Yeah, so what's the core of our suffering from your experience working with others? And then we can go about it like, okay, what's the skillful way to go about it, to undo it?
I didn't expect this question, so I might answer differently if I had 24 hours to think about it. But right now, I'll say I think the core of the suffering is the trauma or complex trauma that got frozen in the body from our formative years, and all of the beliefs about ourselves that also got stuck in the body because of those traumas, what we took it to mean about us or about the world around us and our place in the world.
Yeah, let's expand on this a bit because that's important. Not many people talk about this, although there's a lot of trauma talk out there.
Okay.
There's trauma first, something hurtful, shocking, unpleasant, either is like one-time event or many times.
Yeah.
And so that happened, but then that's not the only thing, is that something, because we had that, our system makes a meaning out of that. So can you explain a little bit? So there's trauma and then there's some aftermath of that that grows.
Yeah. It's that complex PTSD, diagnosis, or that, and I can't diagnose people, but I know the symptoms because I had it. And so in my own experience, an example, there are many examples from my formative years and beyond, but just one would be that in my home of origin, there was a daily slow drip of never knowing what state my mother was going to be in. She was unpredictable. She would never have seen herself this way. And whatever mood or state she was in, we needed to match that in order to feel safe, in order for things to be calm. If she was really low or really angry and you were happy, you would not be happy in a few moments because she'd make sure of it, So that happening again and again and again, and the child having to learn how to navigate that kind of an unpredictable space. What's she going to be like now? Oh, she's coming home from work. Is she going to be in a good mood or a bad mood? Created obviously an external locus of control. So not having my own agency over my own experience, but always having to look over my shoulder, feeling hypervigilant. Is she watching me play when I'm not supposed to play? Is she coming home from work early? But deficiency beliefs like, I don't matter, my needs, my wants don't matter. Just be okay by keeping her okay. Or I'm not supported is another deficiency belief that I would later work through when I came to all this work, And there are many others. So these are just the ones that are coming to mind right now.
So just to say here something, because what we do with clients is reverse engineer that. But so first, there's the child who got shocked and scared by the mother and the home environment. Yeah. And now the child, instead of being free and relaxed, the child is vigilant and is stressed. Is the stress when we don't even know what this word means. So basically stress, which is fear, basically. The child is in fear and is vigilant and is tracking the states of the mother, and then is adapting in order to avoid negativity and to be safe. So it's a constant not abandoning oneself in order to be safe, and changing oneself, so becomes strategic. Because okay, well, if I'm funny at that time, then this works. Or if I'm quiet at this time, this works.
I get rewarded.
So basically it's a strategic false sense of identity. All right, so first there is this constant fear, shock, trauma, vigilance. Next level is I'm different now. Which, like, I guess the repression starts, like, well, I have to not express my joy too much and not be too loud, and I'm angry, but there's no space for my anger. So repression, and I'm different. I'm strategically adapting to avoid that. And now later, I think, somehow in a mysterious way, we form these beliefs. The belief is like third stage down the road now. Oh, it must be that I don't matter, or that I'm not good enough, or that it's not safe to be vulnerable, And so then this forms the teenager ego, and then we are trying now then we forget about this, and then we are like trying to build skills and qualities and all of that. So there's a whole, basically, from that beginning, there's a growth of falseness. Falseness is so judgmental, but it's due to adaptation, It's interesting because I think this informs us when people come to us and they have relational. So can you go a little bit into that? Because now people come to us with just the flower of this tree of pain. And so, but okay, this is just some aftermath, some effect. And so I'm sure that you have this. I have this some way. People come to you, they tell you, hey, I have this and that, this or that. And you are listening compassionately, empathetically, but something in your minds, the healer mind, you're like, okay, what happened here? Where we need to go? So can you talk about the strategic healer? So you meet what's coming, but then there's a strategic, bigger view. So what's your philosophy? What's your plan?
Good. I think I have a pretty simple answer for that. There might be a few. My plan is to find the origin of the story, which is what we've already been talking about for most of this interview. So, when the
origin where that limiting, painful story started.
Where it got started, and it's usually in the way that we work in some of the training that we've mutually had. It's pretty simple to find it, because when we first, what the modality is doing above all is it's making the subconscious or unconscious conscious, right? So we've got really simple tools to pull that stuff up and go, oh yeah, that's the core deficiency belief that has been driving my relational issues in life. Okay, that makes sense. And then, okay, so tuning into the not good enough, or I don't matter and I can't get my needs met. Like I need to meet everybody else's needs and I can't get mine met. I don't matter. I don't get support. And that just has to be okay. Like with that running in the system, right? The client will feel that. They're like, oh yeah, this feels true. Okay, once we find it, they feel it somatically in the body. And once we're in tune with that somatic sensation of those words, of those beliefs, I'm not good enough, or I don't matter, or I can't get my needs met, I have to meet their needs. I just simply ask them to ask the energy, how old is this? Not the mind. I don't want to hear from the mind. There are times when I need them to do a little life review and use the mind to answer a question. But when we're working somatically, I want to ask the energy, because the body knows. The body has all the wisdom, and it will say it's 6 years old, 3 years old. It's in utero, like what, 16, whatever it is. And that's when I would just right then guide them to tune into energetically, vibrationally, to who they were at that age. And usually for most people, some people are just not visual. And so it's okay, we just work energetically. But most people, an image of them at that time will arise, or literal memories will arise, which is fine. Whatever shows up is fine, because that's the one I want them to dialogue with. And I have specific questions we ask. We may go off script a little bit, but it's very by design, because when we find the origin of the story, they can see, oh, it's not my partner. Oh, it's not my spouse or my boss or my best friend, or it's not everybody in the world that's the irritation. Oh, it's this person from my origin story, from those formative years or whatever, whenever that traumatic time in life was. And then, yeah, and meeting that aspect so I don't generally just meet an inner child and dialogue with the inner child. I'm usually meeting the inner child who's believing I'm a piece of shit. I don't deserve love. That's the one I'm talking with, right? And so when I'm working with a client, we'll do inner child work as many times as it takes over the period that they're working with me. So it's not just always the same inner child. If there's a deficiency story that it's my fault, no matter what it is, it's always my fault. I want to talk to that child. I want to say, how old is this? Oh yeah, 7. Okay, so I want to talk to that 7-year-old, right? And from there begin to deconstruct the belief. And that's one part of it. And in my experience, inner child work rarely completely deconstructs the deficiency belief, but it takes care of a lot of it. It helps the client see through a lot of it. And then we start moving into some other tools to unhook further. Did I answer your question though?
Yeah. So,
okay.
Yeah. So we are going up the stream. So the person with the suffering, the client comes with like, okay, relational triggers, and then my partner is always doing this, and I'm so triggered. And so then you are kind of, with the beautiful tools we have, we can quickly enter that stream of like he, she, and then all this happens to me, mind that, and discover some kind of deficiency belief, some limiting belief. It's a belief. And then you are saying that you are trying to have the person stay with it a little bit, so let it come out more, it percolates. So then we can follow the scent of the stench, follow the scent or the stench of that deficiency story to go take us, when was the first time you felt like that, or somehow regressing, following the trail of a deficiency belief to some earlier time. And now we have the child state. Yeah, so you identify where and when happened, so then we can find out more. Oh, so this memory happened and mommy was doing this, and then what message did little Johnny get about himself? Kind of, so it gets even more clear. So now you have the child state who has, I'm a piece of shit, right? So I kind of do the same. I try to effectively go beyond the top story and find out what's the culprit of suffering. And we know there's more than deficiency story here, but I start with that. It seems like you do the same. We find the deficiency identity and then regress to see what happened. And Well,
and I think you do too. We're weaving different tools in, so it's not an exact formula, but
Yeah.
generally I would say, yeah. Now, sometimes I'm working with somebody who specifically came to me because they want to do repression work. They really want to be free of their repression, be able to express anger or to feel their fear or whatever it is. But even then, if in doing that work, sometimes we'll hit up against or we'll find a really strong deficiency belief. And if they can keep going vertically with those, I say vertically, it's a language that we use with the repression tools, as you know. If they can keep with that vertical work, we'll do it. But if we hit up against something where we need to slow down a bit and tune into, whoa, when did this belief first come online? Ask the body, ask that energy. And they're like, this is 3 years old. And it's like, it comes pretty quick usually. I will slow things down and just, yes, what you said, go right into that work of dialoguing with this younger me, where that mess got made, where that belief got stuck in my body, and where the identity of someone who's not good enough or who's a piece of shit started to get built up. And right there, that first link in the chain, we go right back there and just start to chop that first link to get them free. Yeah, and there'll be some additional, work, cleanup to be done outside of just the inner child work. But generally, it's like that.
So let's slow it down a bit. So I'm not even concerned like what tools we use. I'm more like a little more zoomed out. Like, hey, what are our primary tasks? What happened here? How are I going to go about it? These are, there can many ways to go about it, and we are very lucky with some great tools. So then I go to the belief and the child state, and if there are feelings there, that's important to be tender, sensitive, and to make a very safe container for that to come out more and more. Stored in that like child, let's say. And then I really love this, how we have in Kilby, in KI, we have this utility inquiry. Is that okay, I believe that I need to suffer, or I believe I'm bad. So we have this, that to dissect it more, to open it more, there's this subconscious utility or seeming benefit of believing that, I believe that I'm unworthy in order to avoid rejection, So there are, you do this, and you do this very well. I really appreciated how you capitalize on it, like, okay, so, and where you use this utility inquiry while bringing the child, and I'm walking in the meadow, and then there's little Mihai, 6-year-old, that can read, and then suddenly there's this dashboard that says, hey, in this life, in order to
get love, you're going to need to believe you're a piece of shit.
In order to not lose love, I have to not trust love. In order to not suffer, I have to not trust love and to believe that love is not real. And so you're really, I like, you saw everything, like, witnessing content, there's the child, there's the consciousness watching this, and really making it very clear, to deconstruct this.
Yeah, thanks. I love that tool, and particularly the way that I've learned to finesse it. So thanks for bringing that up. And for anybody listening who isn't quite tracking, as Mihai was saying, the utility belief is like, how has this belief that I can't get my needs met, I need to serve everybody else, how has this been useful? Well, it's kept me safe. Let's say that's it's that simple. It just kept me from getting in trouble, punished, beat, whatever it is. And so I would actually put that into a statement, like Mihai was saying. So imagining him and his younger self, his little 6-year-old, who they see this written somewhere, some person who knows important things has written in this life, if you want to be safe, you'll need to believe that you can't get your needs met. You have to meet everybody else's needs. And we know, we like tune into the child self and notice, what does the child think of that?
Yeah.
And, often the child will be like, that looks hard, or like, that doesn't even make any sense, or because it doesn't, right? And it's just another way to start to really unhook from this construct, this identity of someone who has to meet everybody else's needs to stay safe. It just starts to come apart. It just starts to be seen through in a soft, beautiful, sometimes funny way. Sometimes it gets funny and just laugh at our beliefs, but yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, you developed this yourself, or you were inspired by other people, you hybridized it. I already got it, I'm using it, I'm passing it on, so
Great.
it's going, it's spreading.
That's great. Yeah.
Okay, so let's bring this thing up, which is pretty revolutionary, I would say, and unknown understanding coming from our collective KI experience in the Killer Bee Inquiries, and Scott's insight was that actually this core woundedness of there's something wrong with me and I'm unlovable, although that can loosen up a lot through making it conscious, and understanding the payoffs that helped us that we're not aware, and seeing that this is not quite true, and this is a 6-year-old who believed that, but actually it's not true, and I don't need to believe this. And even you can add some Byron Katie, work on it, and then you realize, oh, that's not true, and it suffers, and actually the opposite is true. I am good enough, so this kind of work, what we call in KI the second dimension of practice, meaning that processing and looking at the subconscious, but not the very depths. It's not the bottom of the ocean, it's the depth, Anyway, so Scott discovered, and I think we all verified that, hey, that sense of deficiency, even if you deconstruct it like that, actually it may not go all the way, and it is fueled. It's almost like some fauna in the ocean is fueled by some gases coming from somewhere else, from below. So basically, I still believe that there is something wrong with me, because actually there is something wrong with me. And what is wrong with me is that I still find it hard to allow myself to feel anger and to put boundaries and to tell somebody, hey man, back off. Or I find it hard to basically the repression, suppression. So what we found out recently, it seems that in order to really deconstruct and discharge those painful identities, we need to go to a lower, deeper level, which is the repression of natural energies, of emotional energies, and sadness, anger, rage, hatred, joy, enthusiasm. So so can we talk a little bit about that, and
sure.
philosophical orientation, because it's not so known. We know in our little small KI world, which hopefully will become more wider.
I think
with example or experiential, I don't want to get you too theoretical.
Okay. Yeah, a personal example. I mean, have lots of them, because I do a lot of that deepest part of the ocean work, which is, otherwise known as repression work, in what we're doing. So yeah, it actually goes.
How do you go about it now? We're still okay. You identified the core deficiency story. You identified the origin. you work with the child state, and then what else you have in mind when you have people coming to you?
Oh, so if I'm working with a client versus a personal story, or
with a client or with yourself, like we stopped a little bit, like, okay, we do these levels first, but
yeah,
then the idea is that there's more there underneath.
yeah. Gosh, I feel like not exactly sure where to begin because it's such a big topic and a important one. Well, what I guess I'm going to kind of go all over the road here, and hopefully I'll tie it into the stuff that we've already laid out. So one of the more common areas that people repress is anger expression. Some people can't even let themselves feel anger. Some people can feel it, but they can't express it or express boundaries, like what you said. And that was me. So when I would go to do anger repression work to free myself from it, I just kept hitting a hard no. And when I kept at it, the one thing that kept coming up is because it would send me into a shame spiral. If I expressed anger or a boundary, I would end up feeling so ashamed of myself or the other people. I assumed the story is they'll make fun of me, they won't care, right? Because if I don't matter, they're not going to give a shit anyway. So, my anger, how important this feels to me, and this boundary and my anger will be met with meh, nobody will care. And that was any of those, or if I was like attacked for my anger expression, all roads would send me into a shame spiral. So I finally was like, oh, maybe this is about shame repression. Let me see. So I started going into that, and sure enough, so I was working with anger repression, thinking that it was the core thing, but really I had to meet the shame issue first. And like, it's, I can let myself fully feel this shame and how ashamed of myself I am, what a shameful being I believe I am. And I can let them see my shame. I can express my shame. And it was just like, no, don't feel it, don't express it, no, right? And so what's interesting is that within this big bundle of no, don't even know about this. Not like, it's not just don't feel it, don't express it, like just don't go here. Everybody knows that. What was being held in place because of never going there were these deficiency stories of, I don't matter, I'm not important, I'm unsupported, I can't get my needs met, everybody else's needs have to get met first, right? All of that is in this shame being, because if I suddenly stood up in my importance and I matter, and I'm not going to meet your needs, I'm going to meet my own, what would happen? Shame spiral, triggered instantly. And so there was this avoidance of shame, even though it was always running inside, Mihai, like always some level of shame. I felt like I am shame, walking, breathing, sleeping. I kept coming back to it in the repression work. And once I finally was able to fully meet it and feel it, and with some inner child work, with a few other techniques we can talk about, they're really good, especially for feeling hard things that we really don't want to feel. I came to like fully meet this shame me. And to my shock and surprise, I fell absolutely in love with her. Like, I'm not ashamed of her. I think she's magnificent. Now, in the origin story, she wasn't allowed to exist because she was too smart, too loud, too joyful, too this, not enough that, whatever it was, right? And so the story was, don't be me, don't express me, be whoever they need me to be in order to feel safe and get love, right? So as the shame got met and fully felt, and like I got to a place where when I would inquire saying I can fully feel this shame and let them see my shame. It was hard. It was uncomfortable, but I finally got a yes, I can. That was something melted in all of this, the frozen fear of like, no way, no way. Something melted and it became, okay, I can let them see my shame, even as excruciating as that sounds. Why? Possibly because I did the other things we've already talked about in the session, right? Meeting the shame child and seeing that, like, I'm not ashamed of me. Mom was ashamed of me. One of my sisters, my grandmother, but the rest of the family wasn't ashamed. And I wasn't ashamed of me. I wasn't ashamed of my desires, of my ambitions, of my laziness, of my stupidity and I wasn't ashamed of any of that. I was just me bumping around in life. So I was able through that process, through that work, to actually witness the smear campaign of shame that got laid on me. Mm-hmm. And was able to totally see through it. And the whole thing just collapsed. It just deconstructed I was working on it for a while, but the moment that it deconstructed, it was done. No more. And that isn't to say I can't feel shame in my body. No. I'm a human being. I can still feel it. I just don't get stuck in it because I go right to it. And I'm like, I'm not ashamed of me. I'm not ashamed of you. Like, we're okay, But that was magnificent because then what happened is I started to be able to express anger and boundaries, something I could never do before. Right? Then joy starts bubbling out, something that was squashed. I got my loud laugh back. I had to quiet my laugh because I was too loud and I was shamed for it when I was younger, right? So all these things started to become free from that core repression of shame. And later, so I still do my repression work, I still work on things and try to free myself up in every aspect. And I decided at one point to work on love repression. I just had a spidey sense that I was very measured with love, right? I had all this freedom oozing out in these other ways, but when it came to love, I was very neatly packaged. I was not able to just be big, boundless, too much when it came to love, either putting it out there as a loving being or receiving it. I was very somebody coming at me in a really loving way made me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so I tuned into that and I started doing repression work on that. And that too would reveal deficiency stories. That the deficiency story, it's as if, like you had said, the deficiency story is sort of an upper level. It's like we call it dimension 2, and then dimension 3 is like the deeper level. The repression work is the deeper level. So these deficiency stories, we do work to see through them as they're not true. They never were, right? But they can be tightly held in place because they themselves are protecting us from going into this repressed material down here.
Yeah.
Getting free, like really fully free, right? So when I started getting into the love repression, once again, just like with the anger that actually took me to shame, which was the real primary repression, the same thing would happen with love. I would start inquiring into this. It was a powerful inquiry. And still, it would end up taking me into power. That you can't express and be and receive like unbounded love because it was something I can't even exactly remember, but that would be way too powerful. I would be way too powerful. And it was like, what? So, and I kind of missed it a couple of times. And then finally it kept showing me that. And I was like, oh, I have to repress my power. Yeah. Oh,
it's unsafe as a woman statistically to be like that,
For sure. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question quite clearly, but I do teach generally through my own experiences. And so, I'm just kind of rolling with it.
yeah, so it was like starting from like unpleasantness in the body, discomfort, discovering your own deficiency, story, identity, beliefs, but then realizing that there's anger, repression, and all this good girl
Yeah.
there. You keep following it, the trail, and then there is this shame, that kept the anger at bay, and then you went into the shame.
Yeah.
And then you realize that actually it's nothing to be ashamed of, and actually it's lovable and sweet,
Yeah.
then
That's
somehow without you working on the anger, now the anger was available.
more available. I would still have work to do there, but now I could do it because the shame wouldn't hijack the whole session.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because it had been fully met. I would still have anger repression to do. But go ahead.
You can see how this builds, I don't know, I saw you for the last year or two or more, and so you became more confident. So you're more confident. I think that the uninvestigated shame and unallowed anger created this kind of, and also this is my story too, like hesitancy, doubt, is it okay? Is it allowed? Is it okay? And then as those layers of anger and shame, then there's more your power as a teacher, or power as a, hey, I know what I'm talking about here, without arrogance, so they start to shine forth.
Yeah.
It's almost like I have this image of like there's this like a lotus flower or something with many, many petals, and then we are trying, and they are closed somehow, and with the toxic gases and fake flowers on top.
Yeah.
Kind of getting rid of the fake flowers, and then starting to meet the toxic gases, and then we are trying to open this petal like, hey, I can show anger, or anyway, there's all these many reasons why it's not okay to show anger, or not okay to show fear or sadness, or all these many reasons, but we stay with it, with the light of compassionate, welcoming inquiry, and then the stars open one. It's like, oh, this little of a lotus opens a little bit, and we think, oh, this is great, it's awesome. But then we're like, oh yeah, but then there still is closed here again. Let's try to open this one, and another one, and another one, and they're all connected actually. And we kind of being surprised about the effect, because somehow I don't have to work on each one of them. One opens, the other one opens.
Right.
It's like a momentum now. It's a momentum of the, rescue tiger becomes like a tiger, in the
what a gift that by doing, it's hard work, as you know, repression work. It's not for sissies. And it's the gift in it is what you just described, that by having the courage to go into that stuff, it doesn't just open one repressed emotional area, just anger. It can have, or just shame. Because I mean, what I said earlier is that the shame was me. I'm a shameful being. Don't be me. Don't exist. Be whoever they need me to be. Don't express authentically. Be whoever they need me to be. So I had to front and fake and wear masks and all that. But when the shame became unrepressed, seen through, loved, and allowed to be or not be without me believing that I have to shut anything down anymore, right? Next thing I know, I can start to express anger, rage, even sometimes. I can start to express boundaries. I can express my hurt. I can express fear and I can feel these things. I can really feel the depth of my sadness. And this is going to sound really weird, y'all, but like, it's delicious. Like, it feels good to feel these things fully when I'm not so scared of them. And when they're not triggering this core shame that's like the thing you never, ever want to feel. Right. God. So yeah. And what you're saying, like opening one is open others, like to our surprise. And what a gift that we don't have to just constantly hammer away for the rest of our lives at this. You start to get momentum. Yeah. That's great.
In this, which was a little scary and I forgot the word, but like a lot of spiritual work I've done was like anger is not spiritual and hatred definitely
Oh,
low. And so
yeah.
it was a big breakthrough to as I've peeled some layers of this unpleasant and not spiritual emotions, at some point it ended up with like hatred. I could start to feel
Yeah.
with this hatred here, hatred of important people in my life and of God and
Yep.
peace and somehow, but there was enough confidence and practice to go there and to allow this somehow. And the person who was facilitating me was like, just like, yeah, man, awesome, go. And to have this layer of hatred that was there in me, and I was oozing it sideways
Yeah.
in
Yeah. Me
a
too.
spiritual way, in a little jab, in a little
Little pokes. Yeah.
you know. So yeah, it's interesting. And so then what I noticed right away, I was comfortable with my hatred and my rage and all of that. So I could see that I wasn't comfortable with my clients' rage and hatred, and I wanted to make it better and the challenge their cognitive distortions and have them see that they are the presence and calm down, bro, basically. So,
Yeah.
but now I could see right away, I see the fur of rage or hatred coming, and I'll be like, yeah, bring it on.
Mhm.
And the what is cool is that we don't end up now, because some people or myself, I was concerned like, wow, now we are going to end up, I lose all of this spiritual equanimity and
We're going to go
compassion.
around being abusive to each
I'm an
other, right?
asshole,
Yeah.
reactive, nasty individual. But no, what seems like these are moving through anger, shame, hatred, and now I have more creative ideas. I'm like,
Oh,
ideas, this, yeah. And then I have energy to make it happen. I'm more, less lethargic,
yeah.
less. Oh, also, I before people have with a lot of repression in place, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want.
Yeah. I was one of those, Mihai.
Yeah,
Yeah. Totally. Very different story now.
yeah,
I love what you said about the creativity opening up. And P.S. I love doing work with hatred. I loved meeting my own hatred because it was so honest. And I was trying to shove down and pretend I wasn't. In reality, I had hate. I hated, And then when my hatred, let's say, came out of repression and could express, it was a new world. And then guess what? I went right back into the same spiritual, being a good girl, don't hate, but unwittingly. I didn't realize I went right back to the old pattern again and would have to bring hatred out of repression again, like a year later. And so that was like oh my gosh, I bamboozled myself into that same old good girl, spiritual girl pattern. But the life force thing, the creativity thing, like with all this stuff that has to be repressed, it's your energy, it's your life force trapped down inside. And as it no longer has to remain there, we fear that we're just going to go around expressing explosive anger all the time, or hatred, or whatever. And that's not the case. It processes, and then that life force no longer is steeped in shame story, anger, hatred story, or whatever, because it's been freed from all of that story, and it's just pure creative life force.
yeah,
It's wild. I would not have expected that.
yeah.
It's pretty neat.
Yeah, I've seen this with people, let's say, very intelligent, educated, highly skilled, let's say, professional man comes to me that presents as like tentative, highly intellectual, hesitant, with I'm not worthy of success, and I don't know what I want, and I don't have what it takes, and I'm weak, and I should be perfect. Yeah, and then we go a little bit, explore this, follow this reverse trail, end up with anger, repression. we do anger repression, so he can actually allow this and have more of a voice,
Yeah.
We don't work on the other stuff much, but now he reports back to me like, hey, I'm getting more clear with what I want, and actually I'm going for it. And, it's just that reservoir of primal anger power was holding the other ones like, it was stifling the life energy, as we call it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's so incredible to hear back from people as that starts to free up.
Yeah.
And it's neutralized. It's not polarized. It's free energy to use however they want. And it starts to feed creativity or sexuality. Like they can become sexually awakened again when they've kind of been dead inside, or, suddenly there's a desire to exercise when there's just been like lethargicness or something, if that's a word. Yeah, there's just a lot of ways it can express now. It's beautiful, powerful.
It's energy to hold our energy down.
Gosh, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it takes a lot of energy.
Yeah, it's true.
And what I appreciate is that I think it's starting from Scott, I guess, in all these spiritual communities. And, I was lucky enough to be in a cult. So I had that kind of experience, because it was growthful. And there's a transmission from the head. In Romania, there's this thing like a peștele de la cap se împute or something, which means like the fish gets rotten from the head first.
Interesting.
Which, let's say you have an organization, and then it's very important for the leader of the organization, the teacher or the founder, that how they are, because there will be a download of that.
Yes.
What I appreciate about Scott Killaby is that there was the download of a transmission of authenticity, and the transmission of realness, and transmission of that I don't have to be special and like under the facade. So I got this transmission of realness, and also what I appreciate about it is that it was not an intellectual discovery. What Scott discovered was experiential, with the blood, sweat, and tears in his own work. And then we've seen this working with thousands and thousands of people for many years. So it's not like, oh, I came up with this theory and here, this is my new discovery. So it was all experiential from I'm seeing this. So it's like archetypal, universal patterns. And then he tells it to us. And then I go work with many people, and you work with many people. I see the same. Yeah, that is true. It's confirmed. It's being confirmed. So I like that. It's not a theoretical. It's very, it's tested by experience,
Yeah. I love that too. I also really appreciate that he and everybody in this work does their inner work.
Yeah.
Sometimes like I've gone for a period of time where I wouldn't, and where I just was like, forget it. I'm just tired of it all, kind of got an attitude and like, I've done enough, well, that's because there's something there, and then, and I knew I will when I'm ready. Sometimes I've copped an attitude about it and just delayed it for a while, but eventually we all come back and we tune in again and we do the work. And that is led by, Scott and Dan McClintock, both. They model that. So it's great. And, even if I've ever seen kind of a blind spot in one of them, next thing I know, they've spotted it and they're doing their inner work on it. And I'm like, oh my God, it's really, I love that. It's just such a great integrity level and great modeling. Yeah.
Well, to kind of land this ship here, can you share a little bit like, what now with all of this energy coming back to you, available to your spirit that is here for a reason, and you are as a healer, facilitator, teacher, trainer,
Mhm.
So what are you passionate now? What is your offering? What are you, they say people are interested. They will say, oh, I like this Darby, man. What's she doing? I want to know what she's doing, and I can maybe work with her in some way. So what are your, let's say, offerings, or what are you now passionate about to work with what? And I know that you have a bunch of things happening. So can you share a little bit?
Yeah, hopefully I don't forget anything. Not like there's that much, but certainly I'm very passionate about one-on-one session work, much of what we've already talked about today in this meeting. And I, as a trainer of these tools and some of these other modalities, I love watching the light bulb come on in people as they go through a training with me and apply the tools and see for themselves and go, oh my God, I had such a breakthrough. This is amazing. And that's just wonderful, that it's just, I'm passionate about it because I know, but everyone needs to see for themselves, how effective these tools can be. Additionally, I have an inner child workshop that I created. It's very affordable, very low cost, and very simple. And so that's available, as well as downstream, I'm going to be working toward a complex PTSD symptoms healing type of workshop. Again, not being a clinician, I don't diagnose that sort of thing, but if somebody has been diagnosed and they want some tools, that too will be very affordable, and using the framework that we've talked about to meet some of that and heal some of that. I went through all that myself without a guide, without a formal workshop or teaching, and I went the long way. So I want to create something that's succinct and specific and addresses some of that wounding and that stuck space of complex PTSD. And then, of course, I love the plant medicine ceremony work and helping people integrate whatever was given to them in their journeys. Many of us know, having gone through working with psychedelics or entheogens, what it is to have an amazing journey, and then 3 months later you can't connect with that, whatever you were connected to, and it's such a bummer. And so helping people one-on-one in sessions in that respect, and possibly starting some small groups in that aspect for people who can't afford one-on-one sessions, let's say. So yeah, that's sort of what's on my radar right now. In my personal life, what I'm passionate about is healing my money and wealth consciousness. I'm having a blast with this. It's getting really fun. And I have a really good teacher around it too. And then I went to a healing retreat recently, a couple weekends ago, and and boy, did I need it. My nervous system was fried. And so it was a 5-day retreat, and it was with a lot of new age healing, a lot of energy work, and a lot of also some like drum circles, sweat lodge, sound bowl, crystal healing, sound baths. I don't have the language right, but you get where I'm going with this. And then a lot of intuitive healers and people who were doing strange modalities that I'd never heard of before. That worked. They were so powerful. And so I sort of, in my own journey through life, I was way into new age and healing and energy work and this sort of thing. And then I got away from that. Because it wasn't really working for me at the time, and I would have to go down this other path of plant medicines and then self-inquiry the KI way and all that. I was called on a different wily, twisty kind of journey, which is fine. But now, and even a non-dual journey for a while, right? I kind of went down that path and was like, oh, okay, I can see there's no one here. Okay. But now I'm back and I'm playing in this sandbox again with this wild stuff that I find just absolutely fascinating. And one of my favorite things in life is wonder. when something is just like, whoa, how does that work? And it just, touches into that childlike wonder. I love being in that state. And so this healing retreat really reconnected me with that. So I'm kind of playing with that stuff as well around healing. So for instance, there's real science behind breath work, right? Breath work is so powerful. And that's kind of my new fascination as well, is tuning into that, possibly even just taking a course and getting a training in that, because I can see how powerful that is to help meet the nervous system, help getting energy moving that's very stuck, et cetera. But also having blast off experiences in it.
Yeah.
Super fun, right? So anyway, yeah. So as far as work goes, there's some stuff that I'm super passionate and turned on about. And then personally, this is some stuff that's caught my attention, got me turned on.
So, okay, to simplify it, Darby is available for one-on-one sessions.
Thank you. Sorry.
This kind of KI, this kind of awareness-based psychosomatic processing. It's from the awareness-based somatic modalities.
Yeah.
So she's available. I'll put a website here in the underneath this video. Also, she is handpicked, a highly skilled trainer, meaning that she is trained by Scott to train people in this modality. Yeah, to become either to learn this KI modality is, it's awesome to work on yourself. So it's designed to self-facilitate, and we are using it on ourselves and we are using it on others, unlike other therapeutic modalities where you are really dependent completely on a therapist.
Yeah.
This one, it helps a lot to work with someone, but ultimately for this working with someone, you just able to skill that dealing with your stuff skillfully and surgically. So as we know, I don't know if people know, but Scott is trying to let's say transition into some other part of his growth and development. And then, so he trained a bunch of people, not many, but Darby is one of them that is highly authorized and skilled to train people, learn the method. So you can learn with Darby. And also she's doing these workshops, inner child workshop and other things that I guess she's sharing from what she discovered.
Yeah.
And about this thing with the clinician, I'm a clinician. So then, I was years ago, I studied Hakomi psychotherapy for 5 years, but because I wasn't a psychotherapist in the mental health system, I couldn't call myself a Hakomi psychotherapist. So I had to call myself a Hakomi practitioner. Yeah. And then I did a master's in psychotherapy, which was a joke, basically. It was a kind of mental and but this is what is necessary in order to call yourself a psychotherapist. You need to do this master's, which was highly mental. And if I were to rely on that master's to work with people, that will be bad. And I think a lot of people, they are psychotherapists from such masters and like theoretical from books. And so, but however, I've done that, and now I could call myself a Hakomi psychotherapist. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this legal, which, I understand is to protect the population and whatever other reason. So anyway, then I got the credentials, so then I can be called a psychotherapist. But what I want to say here is that, sometimes I have friends or people who need deep work, and I refer clients or I refer people to you or to Scott or to people that I know. So I consider you and some people in the KI community much more skilled and qualified than like a licensed therapist,
Yeah.
So I'm putting this out there. And also it's nice that also some licensed psychotherapists that are learning KI.
Yeah, it's great.
I think that's good that this makes this modality to be less niche and less kind of in the just in the enlightenment arena, but as
Yeah.
a healing modality is what Scott would like as a mission. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying all of that, because it might be important to know that I'm not a licensed therapist or psychotherapist. I am a self-inquiry facilitator. It doesn't sound nearly as legit or sexy, or maybe it does sound sexy, I don't know. But I just happen to be very skillful at this work that deconstructs the who we've taken ourselves to be that is suffering. Pretty simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think most important is that we are walking the talk.
Yeah.
And clients tell me like, hey man, what I appreciate is that you are doing the work and you are vulnerable and you are talking about your stuff. And so that's inspiring,
Yeah.
Yeah. And that we are not done. Scott just sent me a message this morning. He discovered something in his own thing. And he was like, see, we're not done. Nobody's done. It's so annoying when people say I'm attained, I'm finished.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Oh.
All right, Darby. So
Thanks, Mihai. Thank you so much for taking the time. Yeah, it's great.
My pleasure. All right. Thank you. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.